Welcome back, everybody, to Creating Communities for Neurodivergent People. The title of this episode is Who Decides What a Meaningful Life Is? I think that's really important and cogent to this conversation about autism. This phrase actually I stole from a movie I've been watching continuously, Life Animated, because it's about Owen Suskind. His father, Ron, produced it, and it's the whole life journey of when they realized his son was autistic to his son is now living on his own with management and has a job. And of course, I've used many boxes of Kleenex as I've been watching this. Um, Here's why we're doing this. Autism is now a national discussion since Robert Kennedy Jr., head of Health and Human Services, held a press conference on April 16th to explain why autism exists and the damaging effects, in his opinion, and everybody's allowed to have their opinion, in his opinion, of autism. And I'm just going to paraphrase. The damaging effects are it destroys families. And then for the autistic individual, they can't work. They can't use the toilet on their own. They can never play baseball or any sports. They can never go on a date, and they can never write a play. This discussion today will neither be political or negative. It will be positive, uplifting, and full of hope. I'm the silver lining girl. I looked at the press conference as an opportunity to be part of this national dialogue by bringing together autistic people, parents of autistic children, and professionals working in the field of autism to share with other parents watching this discussion who have just had a diagnosis for their young child. And the questions are what to do now, what to do about my child's future, and what will happen to my child when I'm no longer here. And then other parents who have worked with their child, now they're graduating, and those questions are, what kind of a future, graduating from high school, and what kind of a future is my child going to have in that addresses the 3 points that this show is about: a social community, a residential community, and unique employment for their child's skills and talents. So let me introduce all of these phenomenal people for you. I'm so lucky and grateful that you're all here and in my life. We have Dr. Rick Silver, MD, Master of Public Health. He's the director and founder of Thrive Emerge in Columbia, Maryland, a peer-based outdoor treatment program for neurodivergent teens and young adults who have autism spectrum disorder and ADHD, and who are struggling to launch after high school. Rick is also a father of 2 children with ADHD. We also have Dr. Shari Corbitt, clinical psychologist and neurofeedback specialist, works with complex mental health. She's a complex mental health provider and founder and director of Awakenings Treatment Center in Los Angeles, and a mom of an autistic child who is successfully working. We then have Janet Lewis and maybe Vivian Shudde. Vivian had something come up today, but she's struggling to get here. Vivian, if she gets here, is the executive director of Brookwood Community, and Janet Lewis is the director for Center of Learning at Brookwood outside of Houston. It's a 485-acre inclusive complex with housing, a social network, and employment for all individuals there. Vivian's sister is the reason why Vivian's mother started this community, and Janet also has an autistic child. We also have Jen Wilger, executive director and co-founder of the Temple Grandin School in Boulder, Colorado, a socio-academic curriculum for neurodivergent children to achieve workplace success after high school. Jennifer's a mom of an autistic son diagnosed with Asperger syndrome at age 3. We also have Bri Gallagher, an autistic woman who will speak from her own personal experience trying to navigate the world as an autist within camps that cater to neurodivergent people, an aide in the classroom, I figure special education classroom, Bri, and is starting her own nonprofit for neurodivergent people called the Connection Hub. And then we have Jennifer Navarro. She works in the area of probate and special needs trusts and conservatorships. Used to be in Los Angeles, now she's in Nevada, and the mom of Noah, an 8-year-old nonverbal autist. Jennifer has found a way to communicate with Noah through song and has watched his talent in animation grow through early intervention therapy and strong family support. Again, he's just 8. And then lastly, John McFadden. John is my nephew and co-host of this show. He's my inspiration and motivation for doing this. John is 40 years old now. He's living on his own in a managed apartment situation, has had employment for the past 20 years, and can speak from experience in his journey to create a social community, residential opportunity, and employment. So, John, I want to start with you, and I want to ask you, what's the worst thing that people do to you or you experience that prevents you from living the life you want to live?
Um, Putting people with special needs down and not giving us a chance to thrive because we can do it if you just that's what they should do for people like us because even though we have like a slower brain than everybody else, that we want to be treated like everybody else. Just because it's hard for us to do certain things and other people, it's very easy. So that's my thoughts on that.
And I think that's perfectly said because, if I may, since I know you, honey, and I've
Hmm.
been thankfully part of your life for 40
Yes,
years,
yes,
that is, John taught him. So his issues are reading, writing, arithmetic, right?
yes.
John taught himself vocabulary, and you're going to see exceptional vocabulary by doing what, John?
By watching Tupac Shakur's interviews and putting the captions on and memorizing all the words that he was saying on the computer, like on every interview that he did. That's what I did.
Tupac Shakur, by the way, is our favorite rap artist. We
Yes.
share a love of music and shopping. So
Mm,
every time I'm in Pittsburgh, we will shop without and
yes.
eat and then shop for music.
Yes.
There was one day, John, you and I were talking. We always talk once a week, at
Yes.
least. There was one day some years ago where you just started talking like this adult that had blossomed and bloomed before my eyes from 7 days before that. And that's when I said, where did you learn these words? Because you're using them just perfectly. And that's what you told me, and I couldn't get over it. Um, John has skills and talents that we still haven't marketed. So, John's done many things like what? Say what your work history is.
Okay. My work history, I worked at Giant Eagle for 15 years. I've worked at TJ Maxx, and then I worked at the VFW by my house.
And the VFW is a
Yeah.
wonderful employment success story because say what they did for you.
Okay. So I couldn't write stuff down. So my friend Nicole and her husband came up with this idea to make a
Well,
picture.
Nicole's a manager there.
Yeah.
Yes, but I would want to say she's a manager. Go
Yeah.
ahead, John.
And she made this picture menu for me. And when there wasn't a waitress or waiter or whatever, I would go wait on the tables and they would circle the picture and then they would draw a line to the toppings and things or the special. And then I would go over to Nicole's place and then she put it in.
In the
and
computer.
in the computer, yes. And then the order went through and I just brought it out to the table. Because yeah,
And this is an employer meeting the needs of somebody who, and we left this part out, spoke up.
yeah,
John spoke up and said, started as a dishwasher and said, I really would like to make more money and I would like another opportunity and I'd like to wait on tables.
yeah.
I mean, it warms my heart. I can't even believe this. So, the interesting thing with the last thing I want to do with John before I go to you, Rick, and that is, as I was watching Life Animated many more times over the weekend, Jen Navarro, I mean, you and I have talked about how many boxes of Kleenex we've gone through watching this movie. I realized listening to Owen Suskind, and then I flashed on you, John, that maybe the way things are said will make people think that the intelligence or the ability isn't behind that. So you never
Yeah.
judge a book by its cover, right? We've all learned that, but it's very hard to do. So the way neurodivergent people speak may be choppy sometimes, but the intelligence is there, the understanding is there, the idea that they want to communicate is there. We just have to let them be and communicate the way they have to communicate. And then voila, our lives will be enriched. What do you think, John?
I think that's a good start. And I think there's a lot of people that would agree with you on that because some people they just they're here's what I'm gonna say. People who don't know what special needs or autism, they're not educated enough and they make assumptions that are not very nice assumptions about people with disabilities. But there's a lot of different people with disabilities, but some can do some things and some people just can't do a lot of different things. But we all we're asking is for a chance for just for us to be accepted in society like a normal human being. And that's my opinion on the subject. So
Thank you.
you're
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you very much. Rick Silver, Dr. Rick Silver, can you just start with a quick definition of autism and then please talk about Thrive Emerge, why you founded it, and what you do there?
Well, Judith, I never do anything quickly, but I'll do my best to be succinct here. First of all, I want to say I appreciate the opportunity to define autism. And I would say, first and foremost, it's a little bit like defining what is a human being. John to me is a definition of autism. He's a fascinating individual who is resourceful enough to figure out what he needs in order to achieve what he wants in the world, has a persistence, a determination to stick with something and learn from it in a way that works for him. So he can demonstrate his gifts to the world. He can live the way that he wants, while he's also struggling with the challenges and limitations that he has, but that all human beings have. We all have challenges and limitations, whether they're emotional or cognitive or whatever, whether they're born of genetics or in nurture, right? Comes from a lot of places. We all struggle with things. I would say the framework that I want to use as I move into this definition is this. People with autism, people who are neurodivergent, people who have any kinds of brain that doesn't work the way the neurotypical world has defined that it should work are simply, first and foremost, people with strengths and challenges. And that's the bottom line. And when we come to our conversations with those people, we need to first be affirming of who they are and thoughtful about what is this individual's experience like. I've been reading a lot of Buddhist literature lately, and they talk about the notion of compassion, which unfortunately is in short supply in certain quarters. I know we're not getting negative today, but the thing that will keep the like-minded, loving people alive and moving forward in this world is a sense of compassion in so many different ways. But in terms of what we're talking about today, particularly for neurodivergent individuals, and to me, compassion means, who is this person sitting in front of me? How do they think? How do they work? How does their brain experience the world, whether it's sensorially or emotionally or cognitively? How do I understand that and then help them shape the world around them so it is more accepting and more loving and more supportive of what they want? Okay, that's my framework for the definition. Now, my definition I'll read here. This is from sort of a quickie from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, right? Which is a psychiatric Bible of labels for human beings. All right. It is a genetically based neurodevelopmental condition that impacts how people interact with other people and experience the world. And in particular, there are issues that have to do with what is called persistent challenges in social communication, as well as restrictive and repetitive ways of acting and thinking. Which I want to say, okay, fine. That gives us some ways that the brain works. We have to be thoughtful, though, that we don't want to remain in this place of a definition that sounds so pejorative, but instead think about it as, well, this is a very unique way that people experience the world. And of course, there's an entire spectrum of people who are experiencing the world. We often talk about the notion of ADHD, right? Autism plus ADHD or executive dysfunction, because the two in real life go together hand in hand all the time. So what's the bottom line? You have brains that, because of genetics and epigenetics in utero, show up in the world vulnerable in certain ways and strong in other ways, that then attempt to interact with an environment that is sometimes supportive, but oftentimes threatening and traumatizing, and that they then do their best to learn the developmental tasks that they need to learn to get on with their lives. Okay? So I'm providing a very broad scope of what I think about when I think about people who are neurodivergent. Tucked within that, of course, is this DSM-4 definition about social challenges and cognitive and behavioral and emotional challenges as well. That was a brief that I could get.
No, that was really good, Rick. That was really good. Just quickly, you said something on your episode that I've already uploaded about and about what happens in the brain. Just very quickly, the brain is divided in half. It's the left side of the brain that goes in a different direction around age 2.5 and 3 when signs show up.
The hemispheric distinction there is not, to my understanding, really sort of neuroanatomically and neurophysiologically what is going on. Really, what you're talking about is the conversation between the prefrontal cortex, which sits here behind your eyebrows, if you will, which controls executive function, and tracks that run from that, little information highways that run from that to different parts of the brain. It might be to the part of the brain that's controlling emotional emotional variability or emotional regulation. It might be to the part of the brain that has to do with repetitive thinking and not being able to turn that off effectively and therefore getting stuck in certain channels. So it really is about the entire brain, primarily the prefrontal cortex's conversation with many other different pieces of the brain. I think about software packages, right? Networks of one part of the brain talking to another part of the brain to carry out a particular function. And that is what becomes challenged, impaired, variant in a way that doesn't fit with the neurotypical world for the neurodivergent person.
All right.
It's not necessarily about a hemispheric split per se, to my way of thinking.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
What do you do at Thrive Emerge? Why did you start Thrive Emerge?
I started Thrive Emerge way back when because I always tell the story, and I'll try and be relatively brief about it. I'm an adult psychiatrist. So when I trained for psychiatry, we learned two things. Number one is ADHD disappears when you're 18. So I didn't need to know anything about it. And autism is those people that Mr. Kennedy described who are severely impaired and banging their heads and will never fill in the blanks. Okay. And I wasn't going to see that in my outpatient adult clinic, so I knew nothing about it. Well, lo and behold, the world will hand you lessons that you may or may not ask for. And somewhere along the way, including my own children and my patients, I began to realize that there was a whole group of people who I knew nothing about and needed to learn about in order to serve them effectively. And those are the people who we now describe as having neurodivergent brains, primarily for us, ADHD and the whole spectrum of autism characteristics, plus learning disabilities, plus slow processing speed, and so on and so forth. So Thrive was started because my impressions were that not that there aren't many good practitioners within the traditional way that we deliver mental health care on an outpatient basis, which is you see a therapist once a week-ish, you see a psychiatrist once every month or 3 months or 6 months-ish. And that's okay if you're having problems with your boyfriend or girlfriend and you're depressed and you need a little bit of Prozac. It works. And you want to talk about it, it works. But you take these incredibly rich, complex individuals who have brains that are neurodivergent brains with autism, and you try and provide them with adequate services so they can live well in the world through a traditional approach. It doesn't work. It's inadequate. It might be necessary, but it's not sufficient. So what I did with Thrive is I developed sort of a comprehensive wraparound approach for people who are fascinatingly complex individuals who need to develop multiple pieces of their life simultaneously that they weren't given the opportunity to develop as they were growing up. So that is what Thrive is generally about. We work with, at this point, older teens and young adults anywhere from 18 to 30 plus, although we've had older people in the program. We deliver care in an outdoor peer-based wraparound setting, very active parental involvement, and we range anywhere from med management to DBT to, very self-regulatory techniques, social skills, job skills, executive function training, all of that kind of stuff. So people can do what you did, get out in the world, fill in some of the gaps, right?
Right.
And get on with your life in a way that's satisfying to you. That's what we're trying to do.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And what you do through Thrive, Rick, is one of the biggest things we talked about, and part of the reason for this show, and that is you gave them community. When you say peer-based, you're big on community. You gave them community, people that accepted them while they're learning how to come out, emerge into the world, correct?
Yes. Thank you for that reminder. So important, because oftentimes, and John, you might be able to relate to this as well. At some point in your life, I'm imagining there was a period, although you might have had a very supportive family and a different experience, but I'm guessing there could have been a period in which you were more isolated. You were not connected with friends. You weren't working. You weren't in school. A lot of the people that we see are sort of sitting in the basement. We always say, half jokingly, half not, smoking a lot of weed and doing 10 hours of video games daily. No sense of meaning, purpose, connection with the world. And then you take those folks and you say, why don't we sit in a group of people who are all having the same kinds of challenges and talk about it, normalize it, make it okay. People feel safe. They feel validated. They feel affirmed. And in that holding, they begin to open up their hearts in ways and their minds in ways that they couldn't before because life was too threatening. Community provides safety, and it provides the opportunity, therefore, to open and learn in your heart, your mind, your spirit. That's the purpose of community. And in this show, this time in our lives, so important to come back to the notion of community. That is what is going to get us through this next phase, whatever is going to be, whatever it may bring. Is those with the hearts and souls who recognize the value of other human beings and hold them compassionately and come together to affirm those sorts of things. That is what is going to get us through.
Thank you.
I will get off my soapbox now.
John, do you have anything to say about that before I go on?
He has really good points, and there was a hang on, let me think. There was a point in my life when I felt like I was isolated at one point because when I didn't have anything or people didn't understand, like, like you can talk to me, but my brain doesn't process like fast enough, so I can't answer, or people just ignore you and they don't want to take the time to actually get to know somebody who has any type of disability because they don't know how to react to somebody like, you know what I mean? Like, um, that is a little bit different than other people, but like if you just give them like a chance, maybe then they can do whatever I think in things like that. That
Okay, so here's what I noticed. When we have big family gatherings, John is there and then he's not there because, first of all, the noise is unbelievable when everybody
yeah.
gets together, right? And the noise is a little
Oh
bit
yeah.
daunting to you, but nobody includes him.
Mm-mm.
It's very difficult when, for anybody in any situation, to understand who's not included, who's excluded in a conversation and take it upon themselves to bring that person in. This is actually a skill and talent that you have to develop when you're in a group. And that's what I noticed with John. He either left the dinner table because the noise was unbelievable and went to his room, or when we were pre-dinner, the conversations just didn't include him. And we do have to be mindful to include everybody in conversations. So, yeah, all points well taken. Now, Jennifer Navarro,
Yeah.
you have your life ahead of you with Noah, who's only 8, will be 9 this year. So, when did you see signs that Noah had changed on the development track? Because he's your 4th child, so you're no stranger to raising children.
Right. It was, to be honest with you, I really didn't notice it that much until we went to his 2-year annual physical appointment. And the doctor asked me how many words he was speaking. And at that time, he wasn't really saying anything. He wasn't saying any words. And he had said, I thought, mama, at one point, and then it just all stopped. Everything, no words, nothing. That's when she suggested I reach out to Regional Center and get him in like a small group therapy at that point. So it took about 6 months for me to go ahead and do it. A lot of struggles I had with me as a mom. Sorry, this is kind of hard.
No,
You don't want
Regional Center, by the way, is county-based, and it was in Los Angeles,
to,
so
yes,
government services. I just wanted to add that. Go ahead, Jen.
yeah. So of course, as a mother, you don't want to think there's anything wrong with your child. So it was hard for me to agree to start getting him therapy. But after talking to a lot of people, I decided, you know what? Let's get him the therapy. And so at 2.5, he did small group therapy, which encompassed speech, OT, and at 3 years old, he was diagnosed moderate autism.
And then he started school at what age?
He started school at 3 with LAUSD in their special education classroom. It was called PALS. And it was a special classroom for kids who had different types of learning disabilities. So maybe some had autism, maybe some had other types of disabilities. So, and that's where he's kind of been, even now that we've moved to Nevada, he's been in a special classroom with children with other disabilities.
What grade is he in at age 8? Is he in second or
He's in
third?
second grade right now, and he will be going to third grade next year.
Okay. Now, this is what I love. So, like in Life Animated, where the Suskind family realized that Owen memorized all the Disney films and talks about his emotions in life and his thoughts through Disney language, the language he saw in special characters. How did you, Jennifer, figure out that you could start communicating with Noah through song?
Well, it all started As much as some parents don't really approve of iPads for their children, I will say I think the iPad has tremendously helped Noah communicate with us through the videos he watches, through music videos he listens to. He takes everything he watches on his iPad and places it into real life situations. We noticed at a very young age that he's always loved music, more inclined towards the piano, but music in general. He loves songs. So I just started deciding maybe the way for me to get him to cooperate with me if I turned everything into a song. So every day I'm singing to him, no matter what we do. So like, for instance, this morning, getting ready for school, this is the way mommy brushes my teeth, brushes my teeth, brushes my teeth. This is the way mommy brushes my teeth all day long. Just things like that. That's how I incorporate it. And he does it. When there's a song attached to it and I'm singing it to him, he tends to be more responsive with his actions.
Jennifer, does the family do that as well then? Because you have a very large family and you're all there all the time. Do they do the same thing with Noah?
No. I would say I'm probably the one who does that the most with him. And I think it's because I'm the one who works with him the most.
Yeah.
My other kids talk to him in their own way, and he communicates with all of us in his own way, differently.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now let's go to skills and talents quickly. So Noah edits videos.
Oh my gosh, yes.
8 years old. I keep saying this. 8 years old, edits videos. Can you talk about that a second? Skills and talents.
I don't know how. I don't know really how he does it. Somehow he's able to go in and he gets different videos of things of maybe that are on my photo app or videos he's taken even of me. He's very much right now into TV logos, Paramount Plus, CBS. He says the logo over and over. This is CBS, Paramount Plus, and he'll take that recording and he'll edit it just to keep hearing this is CBS on Paramount Plus. And he just keeps doing it and doing it. And then sometimes he'll take other videos of other things and he combines it all. And honestly, even his teachers have told me they're not even sure how he does some of the things on the iPads at school because they're restricted, but somehow he's able to do it. He gets through and gets past everything. He's just amazing to me.
It's amazing to me since I still haven't learned how to edit video. So it's really amazing to me. And I'm 1,000 times older than him. I want to end with you explaining how important it is to have self-care time. You and your husband of what, 27 years now, 26, 27?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. How don't to feel and not feel guilty.
No. Honestly, for a long time, I felt like a prisoner. Like I just felt like we had no chance to get out. I felt guilty leaving my son with anybody because I know sometimes it could be tough. Even though he does pretty well independently, he's in his own world. I just didn't want to put that on anybody because also Noah needs help with toileting. He's still in diapers. So there's a lot of things Noah needs a lot of physical help with. Well, while I was in regional center, they offered something called respite. And I was like, oh, what is that? And they said, oh, well, it's basically where you parents need time to yourselves. You need to get out. You need to have time away from the house to get out, release stress, whatever it is. It could be going out for dinner, watching a movie, just going out for a walk, just to do that. So me and my husband, we started doing that. And we were able to have our oldest daughter, who's 28 now, be the caretaker for Noah during those times. And it really has tremendously helped me. It's relieved a lot of stress from me. It's good to get out. I mean, of course, in the beginning, I felt guilty, but as time goes on, it's fine. We all need that. We need to get out and have some time to yourself. It's okay.
And it allows Noah to deal with somebody other than you and his
Exactly.
dad, which he needs that balance, right?
Yes,
Dealing with other people. I appreciate that you shared this, Jennifer, because yeah, I
of
love
course.
your story. I love it. I'd like to go to Jen Wilger now, who's co-founder and executive director of the Temple Grandin School in Boulder, Colorado. Now, say what your school is set up to do, Jen.
Yeah, so we're sort of maybe a little in between Noah's age and the age of the folks that Rick is working with. We serve students in grades, sometimes five, fifth or sixth. We start through high school, and that can sometimes extend a little beyond, but not formally at this time. So they come and they are all neurodivergent in some way. We don't require a diagnosis, but a lot of them are on the spectrum. ADHD, that processing speed gap that you alluded to, is hugely present in our population. And so the programming we provide is a community. Really, it is a community. That's one of our core values as a school. And these are kids who have tried all kinds of different educational settings, and for one reason or another, it hasn't worked for them. And then that trauma piece kind of comes on, and the anxiety and the layers, and they come to us and they find their people and they find a community where we support their challenges and exploring who they are and how their gifts fit in the world, so that they can make choices to move forward into the next phase of life that are intentional and informed by just a deep knowledge of who they are and what they need and what they have to contribute.
You use the word community, which is extremely important.
Yep.
Oh, here's Vivian. Hold on, please. And then I have a couple other questions, Jen.
Okay, sure.
Well, it'll connect. Sometimes there's a delay in connecting. So, and she'll be here. Look she's already half here. Okay, so Jen, you use the word community, extremely important, because not only are we a community of human beings worldwide, and then within our own physical community, but then we have our sub-communities, the people we feel most comfortable with. We have our work community, we have our residential community. In order to go to your school, though, would you talk about the way you test people to be so that you know you can serve them properly?
Yeah, so we start with meeting the parent, sometimes the parent and the student, depending on whether they've talked about making a change in school or whether the parents are just looking into it to start. And then we collect a lot of information, paper, picture, testing, and all that, just to make sure that we have the right resources on our teaching staff to meet their educational needs. And then they come and visit. So we have the students visit as a student in our community for usually 3 days. They come for 3 days, and that gives us an opportunity to see who are they connecting with. Are they following along with what's going on in the classroom, and what do they do during social times? And we have a morning break and we have a lunch period where all of our staff and students are together, and there's a variety of activities available. Do they join in? Do they need to retreat? Do they need to have some alone time to recharge before coming back into the day? And how do they feel about it? You know, we never want to enroll kids. We're not a school where a parent or a district can say we're placing a student in your school. It's very much a mutual evaluation and determination of, yes, these are my people, and we want to be a part, and we want you to be a part of our community.
Okay, that's wonderful. And I like that it's an equal opportunity decision. between the school, the individual, and their families, obviously. Now, Jen, residency requirement, obviously you have to live there, but does the family have to have lived there for X amount of time before they can qualify to even apply?
No, I mean, we almost every year we have people who relocate for the school. And in most cases, there are other family circumstances that are leading them to consider a move. But, with this remote work that people can do these days, we have a community that's an attractive place to live, lots of outdoors and nature and different things that would attract people to want to come. And, school is a part of it. And there are not a lot of schools like ours or programs like yours, Rick. They're kind of scattered throughout the country. And so as a part of a total evaluation of what would be the best for our family, of course, the needs of the child or the individual with special needs are primary in that conversation. And they consider Boulder and they move.
Wait a minute. Did you say they can attend remotely too?
No, parents who can work remotely could consider living here and remoting to a job in another location. No, we haven't really. We get asked a lot about remote options, and because we are so focused on the community piece, they really do need to be present and part of what's going on in the building. Sometimes we'll do little bits and pieces of remote things for our students who are established, but face-to-face is best.
And do they graduate at 18 or sometimes a little older than 18?
Most of them do graduate at 18. Sometimes it takes a little longer if the family chooses that, or particularly if they come to us later on in their high school journey. We have some requirements around exploring college campuses and volunteering and job shadowing and career exploration that are beyond what the typical high school diploma would require, but we feel like serve our students really well in finding their pathways. So if they come to us late, sometimes it takes a little longer and they get to be a super senior, get to enjoy their company for another semester or two.
I think I'm going to be a super senior.
I know, right?
Since I am well beyond the age of senior, I'm going to be a super senior. This is great, a super senior. I was fortunate enough to go to John's high school graduation.
Mm.
And that was a very proud moment for you, John, and for the entire family. Did you you graduated around 18, 19, right? You were kind of at that age.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you like school? Did you like the school that you went to? Tillotson, right?
Yes.
Did you
actually did like it because everybody was the same, I think.
Right.
And they did like all kinds of different things. Like they did like home ec, they did like prepare like like different things for the real world, like how you write a check. And then they would do like they would go like they would give you so much money and you would go to this place called the 7-Eleven, which is like a gas station, and you would have to count out the change yourself, and if you didn't have enough, then you couldn't buy it. Yeah, things like that.
Or unless I was with you, I would give you the money. But yes, this is great. It's absolutely great.
Yeah.
Love that. Okay, now, if you really need a community to not only live in, socialize in, and work in, we have a wonderful experience with Brookwood Community. Vivian, you joined right at the right time. And I know you're at a seminar, you're working, you had to find a place. Unmute yourself, by the way, Vivian. Can you Vivian?
Good. I'm in my car.
Oh, okay, good.
And it's raining.
Now you're unmuted. Okay, well, first of all, thank you, because Rick is in New York. He lives in Maryland. His daughter just had a grandson yesterday. He rented an office to do this. You found time and space to connect through your phone. I mean, you don't know how grateful I am that you're doing this, such an important conversation. So I want to go to both you and Janet now And first of all, Vivian, since it's your mother who founded Brookwood, what, back in 1963, something like that, or the journey to Brookwood?
She founded, yes, she founded the school, a school for children with intellectual disabilities and learning disabilities in about 1963. And then it was for my sister who has many autistic tendencies. She had meningitis when she was 1. And then again, what happens when they're 25 or 22? And so she looked around and said, oh, dear, we've made so much progress. We want to continue to make progress. And so she founded the Brookwood Community, and it's on 475 acres. And we're just using about 100 of them, but it's a full community. Neurodivergent people, you know, I never, neurotypical, I guess is what we'd say. So it's integrated. We have a waiting list for staff to live on campus. But it's the truest sense of the word community.
Filled with love. So what you do, one excellent well, a couple excellent aspects. First of all, in terms of the residential piece, you said something when you and Janet and I talked, and we posted that interview, and that was you mix people up in each of these homes. I think there's 11 homes, you said. You don't have people of all one diversity because you want it to be a real world experience of people dealing with other people who are not exactly the same, right?
Yes, exactly. And if you think about it, someone that is nonverbal is beautifully paired with someone that is verbal. And so one of our core values is interdependent. And so, when you're in school, it's all about independent, but we don't know anyone that's independent. And so it's that feeling that someone that can speak or at least knows the needs of others, it's just critical that they're in homes with people who can't. It gives such purpose to those who are able to help others, speak for those who have no voice. But it gives that person that has that voice such purpose. And it's incredible how everybody just meshes, and we have home families. And so our citizens, what we call our people, have a home family, and they've got children and dogs and pets and the whole bit. And so they live and worship and play, but the greatest deal is that they can work right there on campus, and we kind of do reverse inclusion. So we have over 8,000 volunteers that come and work with our citizens. We do inclusive sports on the weekends, and we have practically a waiting list of Sunday school classes and Boy Scout troops and, oil companies that want to come bond to come challenge our citizens in basketball or softball or work beside them.
This is so excellent. So the one thought I had about you putting different people together in the home in different homes, and that is they can also experience tolerance,
Yes.
compassion, because I don't care who you are, we all become intolerant. Depending on our mood of the day, we can be intolerant. So they have
Yes.
tolerance of other people, which we're being asked to be tolerant. So they have to be tolerant of other people, compassion, and
Yes.
therefore the self-worth, the self-value that they were able to do
Yes.
something nice.
And for those that have struggled in school, etc., it's kind of nice to live around people that also struggle. You struggle in one particular way, and I struggle in another, and we become one through recognizing that we each have our challenges, but with those challenges come incredible gifts.
Absolutely. My God. And then the other piece of this is unique employment specific to the individual.
Yes.
First of all, there's a video on the homepage of brookwoodcommunity.org. Again, you have to have the Kleenex out, but it talks about how you, and I want you to say it yourself, how you look at an individual. And you don't really look at them in terms of skills and talents that may be marketable at Microsoft or the Giant Eagle grocery store. Just what do these people like to do? What is that repetitive behavior that seems to ground them? And then what do you do with that when you see that behavior? How do you turn that into a job?
How do you find work, which equals worth, around what, if you've worked with this population very long, and particularly once they're an adult, you recognize that they are going to do what they are going to do. And so the sooner you recognize we need to find a job that absolutely enhances what they're going to do anyway. And so the repetition, and we get bored so quickly, but that brings them peace. And so we teach skills like painting, over and over. And then it depends if they're tactily sensitive, we make sure that there's a long, there's a brush involved. If they're wanting to get their hands in it, we make sure that there's a sponge. But if they need to move, so many people with autism have such a need. They're not going to come in, sit down, get out a paintbrush and start painting. And it says my internet is unstable.
That's
can't
okay.
imagine.
You've
But
checked out a little bit, but we can hear you. We
anyway,
understand.
and so we have okay, so we have 48 greenhouses. And we have a group called the Movers and the Shakers. And so their job is to take plants from one greenhouse to another, and they just move. Because guess what? They're going to move whether their job requires them to move or not. So we quickly had to come up with things that for those that aren't just going to come sit and be quiet. And we speak 3 languages at Brookwood. We speak English, we speak iPad, and we speak autism. And that world out there might think if you speak autism, it kind of sounds like maybe a scream or a interesting noise or whatever. But we speak that language. And if you speak that language nonstop, the Movers is a great spot for you. Whereas if you're in one of our studios, that could be an extra dose of tolerance if it were all day. So we just create jobs. We have a citizen that we struggled. We couldn't find what he really wanted to do, but we noticed way back he would watch a lot of, police and cops and robbers and television shows like that. So he is 60 years old now, Down syndrome. He is our sheriff. And his job is to protect. He rides on his 3-wheel trike and he goes to work. He works in ceramics, and his job, he sits kind of at the front. Of course, he has his own desk that says security, but he paints while he is making sure the building is secure. So we have sheriffs, we have mayors, we have a guy, when I mean he moves, and he is going to be in the administrative offices as much as he can be, whether it's his job or not. So he is now the Brookwood Postmaster General. And his job is to deliver packages. We get all kinds of supplies and things like that. So his job requires him to be in the administrative offices and delivering and having that interaction with neurotypical people.
I'm so happy.
Whatever it takes.
That was my favorite because when I was interviewing Vivian and Janet, I met him. He walked into the office and delivering mail. And I'm like, oh my God, I heard about you on the video on the homepage. I'm so happy to meet you. This is great. Okay. So this is nirvana. Brookwood Community is nirvana. It takes care of everything. You never leave. So it's the residential community, the social community, and unique employment for your skills and talents. Lest you think you can't move to Houston, Brookwood has set you up with Janet Lewis, who will teach you how to do it yourself if you're entrepreneurial. Janet, would you please speak to that and then fold in your son, because you have
Absolutely. I mean, what Vivian said is we know not everybody can make it to Brookshire, Texas. And I just look at the group that's on this call, and I think all that we're doing in different places and the abilities that we can share with others to build Brookwoods or Thrives or all of this. So that's really what the Center of Learning at Brookwood is about, is the outreach, teaching people to use, just like we might not have the way, we have a way at Brookwood, but we are happy to share everything we've learned. Vivian talks many times about how we fail forward a lot, and we have. So really our job is to share our experiences and the things that we found to be very successful. Particularly, we use teach training. Probably some people might know about that, which is a methodology through the University of North Carolina using pictures, like many people have talked about on this call. We use that in the shops to help provide the methodology and the support to our neurodiverse community.
How do you teach people? Do you have certain times of the year that you do seminars, or how does this work?
Well, actually, not that I'm trying to do an ad, but we have one coming up June 10th, 11th, and 12th, right on. We do it every year,
Please
and
do.
it is coming up. So they come out. We have two presenters that are outstanding from University of North Carolina and come out and present the TEACH program, which is, you do earn credits if you're a teacher or so forth for it, but it's a great intensive program that we do on our campus as well each year.
How long?
And then we will have, so that's the teach, training that you get at University of North Carolina. They have taken the 5 days and put it into 3. But then in middle of September, we're going to be hosting what we call the Brookwood Way Conference. And it's 3 days, and you have breakout sessions, how to raise money. We teach you to make 3 or 4 of things that we make and sell in our store. We'll teach you to make fudge that's so easy, and these incredible bracelets, incredible, that we sell for $18, and the cost in the raw materials is 86 cents. And you actually bake them in a toaster oven. So even if you're just starting out, you can still have what we would consider an enterprise, where it's not arts and crafts. Kind of our rule is, if a Girl Scout troop can make it, we don't. Because our vision is to change the way the world thinks about adults with disabilities. And you're not going to do that if you're trying to sell something and it's kind of a pity purchase. So we grow 50,000 poinsettias at Christmas, and we won't sell them if they're not.
Understood. I want to go, before we leave this part of the discussion, Janet, how old is your son?
My son is 15, and he's actually attending the wonderful path that Vivian and her mom made, the Tuttle School, which is part of the Briarwood School. Yeah, so
Okay.
learning functional skills at this point.
And prognosis for him being independent, what does it look like now for his life after high school?
Life after high school is is going to be difficult without the right supports. So I always say I first got involved with Brookwood as a spy, very honestly, about what do I do for my child? Jen, your story brought tears to my eyes because I did a similar thing, and music was a breakthrough for me. And then I followed my next path, which took me to Briarwood, which led me to Brookwood, which was to find what he needs to have value and worth, which is more than not just work, but the social aspect. And fill a place, going back to how you started this whole session about belonging in a community.
Yeah, just wonderful. Excellent. Dr. Shari Corbitt. So Dr. Shari Corbitt is, tell us everything you do. I mean, you're very active. You're a speaker, you run a treatment center. Give us an overview of that, and then let's go into your life as a mom of an autistic child.
Sure. Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for including me, and I could not be more inspired by just learning about what everyone's doing. I'm not just inspired, but comforted. There's just such a incredible, sophisticated degree of wraparound. I'm just feeling so good. I could just listen to this group talk all day. Anyway, my name is Shari Corbitt. I'm a licensed psychologist. I'm originally from New York, and I moved to California soon after 9/11. I lost quite a few people in 9/11. And I just had to kind of get out of Dodge. And it was the best thing ever because I was fortunate enough to meet my husband and continue my career and start a family and so on and so forth. And I worked in the sort of corporate treatment environments in the areas that I'm really interested in, chronic pain, chronic illness, TBI. Those have been sort of the three areas that I'm very interested in. And my degree, I went to Yeshiva, was in clinical health psychology. So I spent half my time at Albert Einstein College of Medicine and half my time at Yeshiva's graduate school in psychology. So I've always had this interest in how to help support people effectively who are dealing with complex or significant health challenges. And that's what we do at my facility. Awakenings Treatment Center is an intensive outpatient program. We have 2 levels of care, partial hospital, which I don't even like to use that word because it makes us sound like we look like a hospital or smell like a hospital. But when people walk in, they say, is this treatment or is this a spa? So we're very proud of that because it's very grounding, very peaceful, no fluorescent lights, no loud noises. We're very, very mindful. And we offer 2 separate, completely separate and discrete programs. We have a high acuity psychiatric program for folks with psychotic disorders, with so bipolar 1, bipolar 2 would be in our other program, which is for more mild to moderate psychiatric diagnostics and dual diagnosis, but we treat very high acuity. And what happened for me was that we're doing this for many years. July 1st will be 16 years that we've been in business, and we're in Agora Hills in California. And along the way, I have 2 children, my older child, Elliot, Sophia. I always wondered if they were on the spectrum. And my point in jumping to this is that these 2 things intersect, but how radically as I think happens for so many of us, how radically my career changed as I became more knowledgeable about what was going on with my older child. So Elliot is non-binary, so their pronouns are they, them. And I had often wondered, they were subtle things, but I always noticed Elliot's gross motor skills were quite good, quite capable. But their fine motor skills were not at all congruent. So for example, I always noticed that they would hold a fork like this and kind of spear their food, despite that not being a learned behavior. They really struggle to hold utensils and writing instruments appropriately, no matter how many times. So that was one of the first things, as subtle as that may seem. I kind of started wondering, but being a psychologist, my husband, who's not a clinician, of course, very quickly said, stop pathologizing our children. And I said, honey, my goal is never to pathologize, but if one of our kids needs support that would be helpful, let's do it now and not when they're 25 or 35. Let's get Elliot the proper support now. That still didn't really go anywhere, and I was not proactive enough. And when Elliot turned, about the time they hit puberty and turned 13, they experienced a very serious depression, and very serious, with active SI. They were also abusing alcohol and marijuana significantly. And there's a lot of that genetic loading in my family, and my husband's is not a good, it's not a good genetic loading. So I had always been concerned about that aspect. Anyway, we started with the whole treatment, as you would imagine, residential treatment to address the depression. I was more focused on that than the substance abuse. And some efficacy, not as much as I would have liked to see. And then as soon as they were home from treatment, the depression would come back. And then we started having that experience that so many families have, where every time we saw a new clinician for Elliot, they got a new diagnosis. And I just sort of had a moment of clarity. And I said, I'm done. We're done. We're not seeing one more clinician until we get a very thorough psychological testing, and not an evaluation, but testing. And so we did that with a wonderful gentleman in Thousand Oaks, California, named Dr. David Morrison. And he in some degree saved my child's life, because he came out after about an hour of testing, a 3-day protocol, and looked at me and said, Shari, I know you, and I know you must know that Elliot is an autist. And my husband was sitting next to me, and he turned bright red. And I shared this with you when we spoke briefly, Judy. My husband, being the kind, accountable man that he is, spoke up and said, Shari's been saying that for years, and I just didn't want to digest that. I didn't want to know that. And Dr. Morrison sort of became our guide for how to access the proper supports and how to really reconceptualize day-to-day life things. And it was so critically important. So, for example, after a long day of school, Elliot uniformly goes into their room, and what we thought was isolating, for 3 or 4 hours, reading books. Their hyperfixation is typically on a variety of books. And then we were able to learn they're not isolating, they're decompressing. And then they would come out and have a wonderful dinner with us and family time. And so our reorientation and our education about how to validate and empathize with their experience radically changed our lives. And I'm so grateful to say that Elliot just finished community college and was admitted to a few of the University of California schools, and will be going to UC San Diego in the fall. Now, that having been said, there's been lots of challenges along the way. They did get sober and stayed sober 5 years ago. So ever since I was done with all the treatment industry, particularly in Southern California. And I said, you know what, my child still needs treatment. At this point, they were maybe 15 or 16. I said, I'm going to take a sabbatical from Awakenings, a long sabbatical, and I'm going to have my treatment team treat Elliot. And we do all of the many neuroscientific interventions that address dysregulation in the nervous system. And they're deeply grounding, deeply calming. And ultimately, that was what worked for my child. And so as all of that's happening, I'm looking at our clients in our higher acuity psychiatric program, many of whom have cannabis-induced psychosis. In fact, that's probably the #1 diagnostic we deal with right now. And it very quickly started to dawn on me that I had a massive blind spot and that we had been neglecting to support our many, many clients. I want to say the preponderance of clients in that particular group who were in fact on the spectrum. Some of whom would have years ago been diagnosed as Asperger's, some who are a little bit more impaired and need more and different kind of support in terms of processing and learning styles and things like that. But I very quickly hired the right people and started getting educated myself, which radically shifted what we do here. So now we are one of the, outpatient programs. I think we're one of the very few that works with both the significant psychiatric issues, but truly addresses the supports needed. And our perspective here is that autism is not pathological, that it's a unique and creative way of perceiving the world. And as Elliot educated me, and as I now understand, although I can have what Elliot calls my happy theory, the truth is that society is not set up to support people that are neurodivergent. So although autists are not pathological in any sense, the world does not accommodate their creativity, their uniqueness. And so it becomes to some degree a social justice issue. So we also address the social justice components. And as fate would have it, Elliot, when they admit to San Diego in the fall, is admitting into their social justice major. So I'm just so grateful that we got the support when we needed to. I'm also we're very passionate here about supporting families and educating families, because I know that, as Dr. Silver mentioned earlier, the genetic and the epigenetic components, I described to you that vignette where Dr. Morrison was sort of looking at me saying, Shari, I know you. How did you miss this? Not in a shaming way, but just in a genuinely curious way. In addition to him looking at me, he was also very curiously looking at my husband, because once we got educated, although my husband still struggles to digest this for a variety of reasons, he is very clearly also on the spectrum. And I missed that component for a different type of reason. He does have complex PTSD, and it's been a lifelong challenge for him to work through that. So things that I was perceiving as trauma related were actually processing related and sensory related. Getting my husband into a regular gym to work out in the morning is not an option because the noise is so overwhelming. Things like that. So anyhow, so we emphatically educate not only about how to help families help their loved ones. We do a lot of life skills work and case management work, not on the level that some of the other folks here do it, because we are outpatient, but our folks are here from 8 a.m. until 4 p.m, 5 days a week. And we are insurance-based. So with every single commercial payer in the country, in all 50 states, with the exception of Kaiser. So someone can come here, as they often do, from New Jersey, New York, South Carolina, wherever. And as long as their health insurance allows out-of-state coverage, which isn't always the case, we can take them for simply the cost of their deductible. And then we have related supportive housing, which accommodates people with all different types of learning challenges and ways of being in the world. And our assistant manager himself is an alumni and is also on the spectrum. So his presence there really supports people in the proper self-care, but also gentle challenges. And that was one of the, I really appreciated, John, what you mentioned in the beginning by, you know, if we have low expectations, people will live more limited lives than any need for. And one of the most important things Dr. Morrison taught my husband Peter and I was to have gentle but consistent pushing of their education. So they're going to live in the world. They need to know how to live in the world in a safe, comfortable way. So all of the social skills work, but you know, even beyond that, all the ADLs and all the self-care, my child really struggled with that. Brushing teeth was a sensory nightmare. All the things that all of us know, brushing teeth was just a big deal. And now they have this beautiful routine with an electric toothbrush for some reason is okay, and a water pick. And so they go to the dentist 3 times a year, as they should. So, so for me, it was a very intimate intersection of learning about what was going on for my child, and then recognizing I had a massive professional blind spot and that folks in my facility were not being properly cared for. It was quite a deep breath I had to take, realizing that I had been missing this for so long. So,
but sharing this, I mean, my God, Shari, what a story. But just sharing this,
yeah,
that here you are in the world of,
yeah,
and you missed something in front of you.
right
So,
in front of my face.
so thank you for sharing that, because now this takes the burden off of other parents. You know,
Oh my goodness.
we're all the same. We're all the same. It takes us time to figure
Yeah.
out what's going on. We can incorrectly assume, but the one thing I felt while you were talking is the more education a parent gets,
Mm-hmm.
the easier it is.
100%. The partnership between education and compassion is everything. And just a quick example. Do we have time for a quick example?
Please do.
Okay, so, you know, one of the many social cues that Elliot doesn't perceive is metaphorical language. And so on one occasion, my husband was driving with them down the street, and Elliot was sitting next to him in the front of the car, front passenger, and was giving Peter direction on what he should and should not be doing when he was driving. And he got very frustrated and said, "Stop being a backseat driver." And with all sincerity, Elliot looked at him and said, "How can I be a backseat driver? I'm in the front seat." And he became enraged because he thought she was being a smart aleck. And he didn't sort of have the presence of mind. My child doesn't have a smart alecky bone in their body. Elliot's a very sincere, kind, very gentle person, and didn't have that sort of bombastic sassiness that my younger one has in spades. So they got into a big argument. And as we healed together as a family, there were many, many moments like that we were able to process through and say that was one of those times. And we didn't know what we didn't know, but we were able to validate how upsetting and how frightening and upsetting that was for Elliot to be universally misunderstood, including by their own parents. So there were many examples of missing metaphorical language. So, yeah.
And lastly, before we go to you, Bri, lastly, will Elliot be able to live on their own?
That's such a great question. Elliot was living independently, even though they're 20 years old. They'll be 21 in August. They really wanted to have some independence. They're now saying they lived independently for approximately a year. They were the live-in manager of my supportive living. And so they taught people how to cook. They taught people how to clean. It was life-changing. That having been said, after about a year, Elliot decided maybe working in the family business isn't that great. And I think I do want to finish my 4-year degree and so on and so forth. So they're back home and they said, Mom, independence is overrated. But to answer your question, because they do all their own things. They do their laundry. They're actually the best cook in the family, so on and so forth. But to answer your question, they are going to San Diego. And I do have some concerns. So and they have some concerns that they've expressed. And so we've been talking about these openly without dramatizing it, but also without minimizing it. And what we've come to, and we, are in a unique and very, special position to be able to do this, but instead of throwing, $100,000 or something at rent or at dormitory fees, what my husband and I have decided to do is to purchase a very, very modest condo near UCSD so that Elliot will, for the most part, be living independently, but one of us will be there 2 or 3 days a week, so that we can just make sure day-to-day life is being managed, just make sure bills are getting paid. However, we will be teaching them how to do that themselves. We're very mindful of not doing for them, but teaching them. There's very, very few things Elliot is not capable of doing. And I guess the last thing I'll say is they have also developed a sense of humor about some of their limitations. And a few weeks ago, they came home from a very long day of both full-time school and then working afterwards at the supportive living. And they said, Mom, can I just come home and have a cup of tea and spend some time? I said, honey, of course. And when they walked in the door, I realized something was terribly wrong. And they said, Mom, I am so overstimulated. I'm practically mute. And then we both just cracked up. And I said, honey, but you said this. And they said, I know. Give me a cup of tea. I'm going up to my old bedroom to decompress for a few hours. And that's what they did. So to me, that was symbolic of we're cooking with oil here. Things are going well. Yeah.
And they're self-aware.
Yeah,
self-aware enough to ask
Yeah.
for what they needed.
Exactly.
Perfect segue. I want to move over to you, John, a second, because you are 40 years old, and what is it, 2.5 months ago, you got an
Yeah.
apartment.
Yes.
What's it like living alone?
It's like it's different. Like you have to, like she said, you have to like learn how to cook. You gotta pay. Well, I don't pay rent yet, but whenever I do, you have to worry about rent and food and groceries and all kinds of different things.
Right.
And
And you have an aide, right?
not
When
anymore.
they show up.
Yeah, yeah,
This is an ongoing issue. Every county is different, but this is an
yeah,
ongoing issue for John. You have had an aide.
yeah. I've had an aide, yes.
And what did they do? What has your aide, the best aide you had? What did they do with you?
They
For
take
you?
you out like the community. They look for jobs. They teach you like how much, like if you like manage money, not things like that. Things sort of like that. Yeah.
And wasn't Tammy like really helping you when it was time to pay a bill at a restaurant, explaining how to read the bill or deal with the money for the bill? How did that go?
Um, I actually, no, actually, she didn't teach me that. I think grandma taught me that, I
Oh,
think.
okay. Okay.
Um, but yes, like how much you give for a tip or whatever, yeah, things like that.
Um, do you get lonely?
No.
I find this fascinating. He's told me this before. He does not get lonely. I love that you don't get lonely. And you always seem to, when you're at your mom's house, which is only 15 miles away, by the way,
Yeah.
um, how you use time to do things. You always use time. You always got stuff done. So
Yeah.
you're busy. And then who do you have as a pet right now?
Oh, I have a pet rat,
Name is?
Rizzo.
Love that. You
Yeah.
know, rats are domestic, by the way.
Yeah.
Let anybody, and it's a tiny little white one, right?
It's like white and brown.
Okay, I want to talk about the fear for 1 second, and then Bri, I have not forgotten. Um, Fear. So in November of last year, you got the call, you were on the waiting list, they have an apartment for you.
Hmm.
You have to go with your mother to see what it's like, and then make the decision whether to move in or not. Can we talk about fear a second? Did you have it? What was it like? Do you have it now?
Well, I think at first I was scared because I didn't know, like I was so used to having my mom around to show me things. Um, but I got real like I just got scared, and then all of a sudden it just went away because I felt okay, this is what I have to do, this is basically what adults have to do. And I pretty much was scared at first and then not scared anymore. Yeah.
The fear is interesting because my sister had more fear than my nephew.
Hmm.
When I had separate conversations with your mom, John, she was
Yeah.
crying. She was
Yeah.
freaked out. Not only was she worried about, oh my God, I'm not going to be there right there if anything happens, but she had never lived alone.
No. Uh,
That was fearful. That is a parent's transition that they have to go through as well.
yeah.
And so I think that's very important for everybody listening and viewing to know that everybody goes through fear, both you and your child. But my sister always raised her children to be as independent as possible, but you can always come home for help.
Mhm.
And so they are. And John actually goes home. When did your
Yeah.
mom pick you up? This is like a weekly thing now.
Oh, my mom picks me up on Sundays. I come here, I spend the whole day on Sundays. She cooks, and then I sleep over, and then today I go back.
After his mother comes home from work. So
Yeah.
now there's the balance because initially John wanted to come home after the first week or so for a day or
Yeah,
two.
I
She
did.
said,
I
no,
did. No.
no. Call me if you're in trouble, but no. And then
Yeah.
with like a month into it, she's like, okay, I kind of want you to be at home too.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
miss you. So now that's their routine. And I thought that was really cool.
And she comes to my house too.
Oh, that's right. He cooks for her. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
And I never used to cook.
He's the host. He entertains his mother.
Hmm.
I love that, John. I really, and
Yeah.
he will do the same for me when I go back. Uh,
Yeah.
Around July of this year, I will be there, and you can cook for me.
Yeah.
Bri, when did you find out you were autistic?
Um, very late, which is unfortunately typical for women. So I will be 33 this July, and I was diagnosed. It was to keep a very long story super short, um, as is typical for a lot of autistic women, there's often a very long line of misdiagnoses. Um, so I was accurately diagnosed with ADHD as a 9-year old, and you know, in the late 90s, early 2000s, that was tough in itself. Um, as I got older, I got a lot of possible borderline personality, possible bipolar, and just sort of sat with that. Medications didn't work, treatments didn't work. Nobody really knew why. And they were like, maybe you just have some vague, it was always the same thing. You just have some vague possibility. And it was a different vague possibility every time I got a new psychiatrist, every time I got a new therapist. And I finally started working in the space of IDD, intellectual developmental disabilities. And I started looking around and I started hearing people discuss their life experiences, and I was like, something was clicking. And at one point, someone came over to me and very harmlessly said, "Oh, so when were you diagnosed autistic?" And I said, I'm I'm not autistic. And they just said, "Oh." And there was no follow-up. I just got an "oh." And so knowing the individual, they were an autistic individual. I'm like, okay, I know this person. They meant no harm, but they're very clearly seeing something that I was also seeing, but was refusing to see. Because we all know, everyone here, there is no shame in being autistic. But it's still highly stigmatized. It's still very scary to hear. And so I finally went. And at 29, I had to self-advocate more in that year between 28 and 29 than I think I ever had in my whole life. And I finally found somebody, because no one wanted to test me, because I would often get, "You're too smart," which is insane. "You're too social," again, an insane notion. There's just no research for women. So no one has an accurate idea really of what it means to be an autistic woman. And finally, I got tested and they were like, "Oh my God, it was here the whole time." And, then once I got my diagnosis, I found a new therapist, and we started looking back at home videos. We started looking back at when my mom initially started getting me tested for ADHD and my anxiety and my depression. And I was reading all the notes, and it was just all there. And no one saw it because no one knew what to look for. I only knew what to look for because I work in the space, and I'm very intentional now about paying attention to the ways men and women differ. I think something that a lot of people forget is that the autistic community is one of the most insanely diverse communities you are ever going to come across. It's not a linear spectrum. It is a misshapen sort of circle that anyone can fall in any place at any time. And while some folks struggle cognitively and they may struggle academically, some thrive academically, and it's purely social. I it's also, when you get someone who's diagnosed later, I struggled learning about who I was, because at that point my whole personality was my mask. So I get all the time, "Well, you don't look, or you don't seem, or you don't sound." And it's like, okay, you're not home with me when I'm in my safe space. And I let it fly, and and it's very different. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from.
That is a really important story. Bri, thank you. And I'm so happy you're in your right space now, because when I met you, well, you were happy and you connected me with other people because you were in the right space for you. Can you, and for women listening, that what she said was so incredibly important. And I never even thought about the difference between men and women, and how they live in the autistic space. I never thought that there was a difference. So thank you for addressing that women mask more, women are not identified as much as men. Is that what you were saying?
Yes, it's very common now that you're going to, if you are in autistic spaces and you start to meet women, unless they present, I hate to say like more obviously, or as having higher levels of, I hate to say like more obvious support needs early on, it's going to be the same story. They're diagnosed in their 20s or 30s. I have a friend who was diagnosed at 62.
Wow.
It's a interesting journey that we're all on. But that's actually what led me to what I do for work now. And it's put me in a very unique position.
Diagnosis, it seems to me, is the get out of jail free card. All of a sudden that world you were trying to fit in, square peg, round hole, now you're in your own space. Now you can breathe. Now you can live authentically. Now you can find your value, your self-worth, your community. And it just seems to be so freeing. So yeah, we have to research, we have to be educated. Can you talk for a minute about the Connection Hub? It's a nonprofit you're putting together. What will you be doing?
Yeah, so just a little bit to how I got there. I initially worked with children, which is when I was an aide, and it was an integrated classroom in a Title I school. Um, and I learned very quickly that the school was not the setting I wanted to be in. Not because of the children, it was purely all the red tape. Um, but the more I worked with children, the more I realized that while there's always room for growth, there are so many resources for children. And through school, I'm a human services developmental disabilities major, and we were required to learn now that um, therapeutic services and the medical field are advancing. Folks with all different kinds of disabilities are living longer, which is very, very new. Um, so we have to learn about working with adults. And the more I worked with adults, the more I realized there's really not a lot for them. Society thinks that you turn like 18, 19, 20, and like your disability disappears and it's just gone. So society is not set up, services are not set up, and there were entire areas of need where there's nothing. And I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is a pretty decent sized city. We have a lot, but we don't have very many services for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So that is when I got into the realm of supported employment, and I started working with adults who have IDD in order to find their dream job. And I learned very quickly that success is an ever-changing, it's a very fluid definition, and success is different for everyone. So I've just learned that I have to meet people where they are, and I will always assume ability. I will always champion for accessibility because independence looks different for everyone, but they can have it with the right supports. And I believe that you can empower anybody through compassionate education. So I started working with adults and I started listening, what are your dreams? And eventually it moved beyond their job. Well, I want that connection with somebody. I would love to hold hands. I would love to go on a date. I would love to get married. So then it's okay. Well, what does that mean for you? Do you understand what that means? What are your skills? What are your communication skills? What are your conflict resolution skills? Do you know what it is to compromise? Do you know that marriage is more than a wedding? It's more than a dress. It is cohabitating with somebody who might get on your nerves several times a day. How do we cope with that? Before you move in with somebody, are you able to keep your own space clean on your own? Can you be safe on your own? Can you cook and eat the things that you need to stay healthy and grow and thrive on your own? And so I started looking around because I'm like, all right, well, let me connect my people with these resources. And there were none. So I started thinking, okay, well, let me ask their parents and their guardians. Like maybe they have connections that I don't know about. And there still wasn't anything. But the one thing I kept hearing from the parents was, I'm terrified. The idea of my loved one going out and learning about their bodies, having a romantic relationship, having a sexual relationship. It's like every time they talk about it, they'll whisper, they'll be like, sex. And it's like, okay, but these are adults. And while they may have different levels of support needs, different levels of cognitive ability, if it's appropriate, they should be allowed the dignity of risk that their peers have. Because I get a lot of, well, what if their heart gets broken? What if they're rejected? Okay, well, what if? Let's explore that. Is the sun going to rise the next day? Okay, it's going to rise the next day. So what is our next step? How do we deal with that? You can't protect them from failure. All you can do is allow them the opportunity to fail and then be there to support them as they learn to navigate that failure, because eventually if you keep moving, something's going to stick, and that will look different for everybody. So that brought me to the Connection Hub, which is going to be a safe educational space for older teens and adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And the classes will vary based on, levels of support needs, level of cognitive ability, gender in some cases. But I want to start with the basics. These are our bodies. This is the names for the parts of our bodies. This is what our bodies do. This is what our bodies could do for ourselves, with other people. I found that you want to teach folks what is good, because that gives you the opportunity to teach them what is not safe, because they also don't know what's not safe. If they don't know what's not safe, then they don't know how to go and tell someone trusted something bad happened. The statistics of adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities, like in terms of abuse, are astronomical. And it's typically support workers or family members, because they just don't understand. So I want to set that foundation, and then we're going to move and we'll build on these skills until we eventually get to, okay, let's create spaces where you can now utilize these skills, maybe learn how to practice meeting people and maybe going on dates. And the other part of it is I want to be there for the parents. Parents of folks with IDD, it's a huge population, but almost all of them feel completely alone, and they feel isolated, and they feel like nobody understands what they're going through, and they should never feel that way. So I want to have peer support groups. I would also like to have, classes that are taught by professionals to help guide these parents and guardians so that they can walk with their loved ones on these journeys and feel that they know enough to answer the questions that may arise, or, maybe they do get rejected and they know how to sit and walk with their loved one through that. I'm very excited. I have a lot of staff, medical staff, therapeutic staff, also peers who are willing to lead support groups for the client and their parent. I learned a lot of lessons the hard way, and I don't want anyone else to have to do that. I want to be the person I needed, because every single human being deserves to connect with others. It's what we need to thrive, and we deserve to give love. We deserve to receive love. And this is not said to be political, but some comments that were made by RFK Jr., implied that autistic people cannot do anything. And I saw a lot of people jump on and say, well, they have jobs and they have relationships and they have marriage and they go to school, and they do, but it's all levels of ability. But what makes us worthy as humans is not whether or not we have a job, not whether or not we pay taxes, not whether or not we have a relationship. We are inherently worthy as humans because we are alive and we are breathing and we are existing. And that is what makes us worthy. That's the one thing everybody has in common. We are human. And I think sometimes we forget that. And that's why I want to do what I do. It's a connection hub. I want everyone to come together and connect.
Bri, this could not be a better way to close, because never thought about services for adults. I'm focused on, up until this point, the second you get the diagnosis, young child graduating from high school, and then get them started in their own place, in their own job, but never really thought about education for adults. So this was a beautiful way to end this. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate everything that every one of you said. I appreciate the time you've taken out of your enormously busy days to do this. And I think there are going to be quite a lot of people who will be enriched by the discussion we've had today. So thank you. Thank every one of you. And Bri, I want to come back and do an episode with just you once you get the Connection Hub launched. Shari, we have our one-on-one interview scheduled for May 12th, I believe. And Jen Wilger, I have to upload yours. So a lot going on here at Creating Communities for Neurodivergent People. And I still owe you a visit, Vivian and Janet Lewis at Brookwood. Cannot wait, especially since you have a 4-season chef that runs the restaurant, and I'm all about food. So thank you all. And my closing line in every one of these episodes is, in the world of special needs, we all need each other. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.